Well, then I will just take it away. So, thank you all so much for coming to this. I'm JuggleGod. I cast Overwatch 2 now, I suppose. I have been doing that for the last couple of years. I cast primarily most of my work is in the collegiate space, but I've done a lot of LANs. Most notably, recently I did the Red Bull Campus Clutch, which was the regional finals for Valorant over here in the US for collegiate Valorant. So that was a lot of fun, and that was a really great experience. Um, but yeah, let's just dive right in. Let's start with the very basics, very fundamentals, and um, in addition, if you have a question while we're going, actually, I'm going to contradict what was just said. I like to get those questions in at the moment, at the time. So I want this to be more of a discussion, more of a back and forth. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead and ask it. I'll address it then. But just stay muted, for the most part, unless you do have a question, and we'll just go from there. So, to start off, what is casting, right? What are we doing as casters? When we're in the booth, we are the way that I like to think of it is we're telling the story of the game, right? For the viewer, it's more than just narrating the action and talking about what just happened, analyzing gameplay, analyzing different fights, things like that. It's about telling a story at the end of the day, right? And to me, that's the most important thing. And that's what I like to drive home the most. And so that it brings in other things, right? You're not like I said, you're not just talking about the action that's happening. You're embellishing it as well. You are interjecting interesting facts about the players, right? We're even talking about the players' histories, and that can be what they've done before the game that you're currently casting. It can be what's actually happened in the game, right? You can talk about how a player has developed over the course of a match. Um, so you really the way to make the way to make a cast engaging is to make it a story, right? That's what's going to hook viewers in. That's what's going to make them come back. That's what's going to make them become your fans. So you want to really lean into that, but alongside that, you have to make sure that you are delivering accurate and complete information as well. So some of the fundamentals, some of the things that I think are really important are just making sure and by the way, this is we're talking about Overwatch 2 specifically today, from what I understand. So you want to know all your hero names, you want to know all the ability names, need to know the ultimates, and have a general idea. You don't know you don't have to know specifically, like, oh, a Sojourn shot does 40 damage if it hits the body, 120 if it hits the head, right? Or rather a Kiriko shot. You don't have to know necessarily the nitty gritties, the details about, like, okay, Wrecking Ball's grappling claws on a 5-second cooldown, right? You don't have to know all that. Just know the names, know, generally speaking, how impactful they can be, right? And that's going to take you far. Let's talk a little bit about now the differences between the two kind of pillars, or what's the word I'm looking for? The prototypical kinds of casters. You've got your play-by-play, you've got your color/analyst. So your play-by-play is going to be the person who, again, narrates the action right there, telling you what's going on in the heat of a fight, in the heat of a battle. Your color caster, person who's going to, in between fights, in between engagements, in between rounds, they're analyzing the action that just happened and setting up the next fight. So for you color casters, this is a point that I really want to kind of like hammer home for you, is you want to spend roughly 40% of your time rehashing, reviewing the last fight, the last engagement, the last round, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself talking, and then spend about 60% of your time setting up the next fight, right? Because that's what's going to give your play-by-play caster a jumping off point, a point to start talking about the action. So if you just keep it as a color caster, and honestly, like as you're just starting out, if you just keep that one thing in mind, that's going to take you really, really far because not only is it going to make your casting as a color caster consistent, but it's really going to set up your play by play well. Um, and as each of these rolls, you're going to have to flex just a little bit, right? Even if you are keeping distinct play by play and color roles, you are, as play by play, going to have to do a little bit of color casting, and as a color caster, you're going to have to do a little bit of play by play, right? And the reason is you want to kind of blur the transitions between each handoff and pickup, right? So as a play-by-play caster, you could be calling the action, Sojourn's pushing to point, but Reaper is still there and they're full health. They've got the Death Blossom online, but Sojourn able to get the charge shot up, takes the headshot, Reaper's out of the fight, and now that they're gone, that's going to mean that Sojourn's team can push onto the point with impunity, right? So right there, I, described the action, I described what's happening, but then I talked just a little bit about the consequences of what just happened. And that to me is what you're kind of always going for as a play-by-play with your handoffs. You want to give just a taste, just a little bit of color information. That way your color caster can kind of pick up the thread from you, pick up what you were talking about, and then use that as a point to transition into what they want to say, into what you as a color caster want to say. As a color caster, you're gonna do the exact same thing, right? Leading back into your play-by-play, except I guess, reverse the roles. You're going to do some color, so a little bit of analysis and say, yeah, in this next team fight, each team is coming in with 3 ultimates, but crucially, the Gopniks have both of their support ultimates online and the sound barrier. But and if the I don't know, I'm just gonna make up the name. Or if the Dallas Fuel are hoping to take this win right here, they've got to get rid of the Lucio first. And already we see they're targeting him, right? So again, I did the analysis. I talked a little bit about the fight coming up, and then I gave just a little bit of play-by-play leading into the play-by-play. So, any questions about that before I move on? Because from here, now that we've kind of like established the basics of what each role is going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about the timing of throws. So yeah, any questions? I see Goblin unmuted.
Don't be shy, guys. You can all talk. I guess. I guess.
My mic wasn't reading the input properly. Hooray.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Glad we waited for you. Yeah. All right, what's going on, Goblin? Yeah, what's your question?
If you notice something about an upcoming fight that your color caster doesn't necessarily like set up for you, is it okay to just kind of acknowledge what the color said and then go for the thing that you noticed, or is it better to
Yes.
just kind of like play off of it more?
No. In fact, what you want to do is more so what you said. So
That's good.
you want to, yeah. Like as a play-by-play, and sorry if I gave the other impression. Like, actually, in either case, as a play-by-play or a color caster, you're gonna have the thing that you want to talk about, right? You just need to use what your co-caster said as a jumping off point to transition into what you want to talk about. Does that make sense?
Yes, sorry, I'm just writing it down.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is far easier said than done, right? Because, your co-caster might mention again something about like I said, a moment ago, like the Lucio sound barrier, right, is online. They need to take them out, right? But maybe what you've noticed as the play-by-play is like, oh, Zarya is being sneaky and she snuck up behind them, getting ready to grab Lucio away or something like that, right? And so that might be more important to you to talk about in the moment, right? So definitely focus on what you want to say because that's gonna produce your strongest material as a caster. just use that throw as a jumping off point. Use it as a transition to get to what you want to say. So, excellent question. And anyone else? While I'm actually pulling up a video now. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen here in a moment. I just have to find the right playlist.
Sorry, I hope the quality of my mic's okay. I'm not at home, so I'm actually just on my phone.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I'm not sure if this has been covered, or obviously I joined a little bit later about that, or if it's going to be covered. But like, it's just I just want to take something that from like Avril and I can't remember Achilles. Yes.
Yes.
How often / when is it acceptable to kind of not interrupt the other caster, but like to throw in a bit of information that like you can see that something's happening like right now. So like
Yeah.
they get off the cart and you're like the other guy's like, oh like kills over, and you're like, oh shit, the cart. Like when is it kind of acceptable / not acceptable to do that?
Yeah, excellent question. So I guess when is it acceptable to do that? Honestly, when it's needed, right? I don't think there's any at least in my experience, there's no time where I'm like, oh, I definitely don't want to interrupt here, right? So my best answer is honestly when it's needed, and that's a very I don't know, like I feel like it's almost a cop out answer from me, right? But what's important, I think, and the reason I want to say that is that I don't want you to be afraid to do that, because it's a very valuable tool, right? And it's something that I was first introduced to this concept through a YouTube video that Lemon Kiwi and Mushu Beef put out, and they called it piggybacking, I believe. Yeah, piggybacking. So, it could be like somebody is giving like this huge, really, really exciting play-by-play synopsis of what's happening, and then the color caster might just interject with the Lucio or grab or the res, things like that. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Honestly, what's more important is to just keep it short and only do it when it's really, really needed, right? So only when what you want to talk about is going to be, really impactful. And like what Goblin said earlier, maybe something that your co-caster missed, right? And a lot of times, too, the color caster is in like a prime position to do something like that because they're going to be, as a color caster, you're probably going to be taking a more broad look at things. You're going to be kind of zoomed out and looking at like the overall movement of each of the teams as a unit rather than necessarily individual player moments, right? You're going to have that big bird's eye view. And so a lot of times as a color caster, you're able to do that, right? Because the play-by-play, they're going to be really, really focused, almost blinders on, right? Trying to keep up with the action, narrate it as best that they can. So as a color caster, I would honestly encourage you to do that, right? Because it can really, really help your play-by-play. And it'll help the audience as well, right? Because some of them could be seeing it, right? The play-by-play could be the only person that doesn't see it, right? Somebody and people in the audience could be seeing it. They're like, what about the Zarya? And then as a color casting, you can come in and draw attention to that. And of course, it works the other way as well. Play-by-play can do it during a color moment as well, especially in a game like Overwatch where fights aren't. I'm gonna go off on a little bit of a tangent here. It's especially useful in Overwatch, I think, because fights aren't. They're not all like neatly packaged and tied up with a bow. It's not like the fight is starting in 3, 2, 1, right? There's nothing to tell you that. It's just when the engagement happens. It's not like Valorant where you've got your buy round, after every fight. So yeah, does that answer your question? I don't want to drone on too long about it, but I also want to try and give you a complete answer.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Awesome.
Like, the reason I actually wrote up because like I always find that Avril actually kind of like almost seems like too much to me. But, yeah.
Yeah, some people, it's I think you'll find your preference as you move on. as you work on your casting. So yeah. Any more questions? And by the way, I'm still looking for this playlist. Can't find it at the moment. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, I thought I heard someone say something. If not, I'm gonna move on.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. I got a video up and ready because now I'm just gonna kind of go through. Let's see here, like the kind of like the important parts of a game or a round, and I'm gonna do this on control because that's gonna be the game mode where you've got basically the most, or time is at a premium, right? More so in control maps than any other kind of map. So you have to be really, really conscientious of that as a caster, and particularly, well, actually, in both cases, I was going to say particularly as a play-by-play, but honestly, it's just as important for both. So, give me just a second here. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. All right, and can everybody see the match that I've got up at the moment? If anyone can give me a yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Cool. I'm gonna keep it muted for the moment. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it here. So, this time before the gates open, that is color caster's time. So what we're gonna talk about now is throw timing. Now that you know kind of got general ideas of the roles, we're gonna talk about throw timing, when you want to throw, when you want to pick up. And this is from my perspective as well. And actually, I wanna go ahead and mention another point that I think is very, very important. Something that a caster told me when I was getting started, and that's that when you're getting a VOD review, when you're attending a workshop like this, you want to be a filter and not a sponge. And what he meant by that, and what I want to reiterate here, is that take the advice, take the bits of information that I'm going to give you today that work for you, and get rid of the things that I say that don't work for you, right? Because casting, it's an art, right? There's no there's guidelines, but I wouldn't say there's any hard and fast rules to casting, right? So you're gonna get a different perspective from me than you're gonna get from, you know, like Avril, Rich Red, anyone like that, right? They're gonna be saying different things than I am. Use what works for you, and don't be afraid to, you know, say like, hey, what JuggleGod said, didn't really, I'm not getting that. That's fine. Don't do it. But we're going to talk now about just, you know, general idea when you want to throw, when you want to pick up. So right now, before the round starts, that's color caster's time. And in fact, you want to try and keep it. By the way, this is Overwatch 1. I just have these VODs. They're great. It won't matter too much for what we're talking about at the moment. But color caster, you're gonna want to kind of hold on to it until a couple seconds before the fight breaks out. So somewhere right here, as a color caster, this is when I would start to be thinking about making a throw, right? Both of the teams have come out of spawn. They're starting to take positions, right? We can already see in the kind of towards the center that mini health pack has been hacked. Winston's in position on the high ground. So things are getting ready to happen, right? And as a color caster, you need to recognize it. And again, 1 to 2 seconds before a fight breaks out, that's when you want to try and throw it to your play-by-play, because that's going to give them a moment, again, to transition from what you were saying and start to transition into talking about the actions. So let this play out for a moment. See people starting to poke. Winston has got the bubble down already. Getting a little bit of poke from the high ground again. Here's the big engagement. So might have been a little bit early. I misjudged it myself there, but I think you understand kind of the general principle. Any questions about that? Just, you know, those those 2 points from a color caster perspective. Funky Monk, yeah, I saw you unmute.
Yeah. So in terms of like before like a scrim starts, if say you're casting a scrim, because of
Mhm.
that like sort of because of the sort of code that you have, it might take a while and there's like a lot of dead space you need to fill.
Yeah.
You just kind of banter between it. It's
Yeah.
great fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
do I want to be throwing it back to my color caster like right before the doors open, or is that
Yeah, try to get it to your
yeah.
color caster. Let's see here. We'll go to a payload map after this,
Okay.
and I'll try and give you an idea from there.
Okay, thank you.
In general, I feel like so one of the big things is time is at an enormous premium in Overwatch, right? More so than any other game I've casted, right? And so because of that, you want to min max, right? You want to maximize the time that you give to your color caster when there's no action happening, right? You want to let them kind of drive the conversation. So as a play-by-play, right before the gates open, whatever, give the vast majority of that time to your color caster, right? Let them have like 20, 30 seconds. That's kind of just theirs to really set everything up. And if your color caster wants to, they can throw to you as play-by-play, right? Get your input a little bit, but as play-by-play, don't do too much. Like throw it right back to your color caster. Really be respectful of that time, because your color caster is going to do an awesome job of setting things up for you. So does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I'm a bit of a blabbermouth, so that's probably relevant.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, I mean, I think as casters we all are, so that's just the way it is. Cool. So I'm gonna continue forward here. Actually, before I do that, what you're looking for now, right? Because now in this match, the play-by-play is talking, right? You want to hold on to the play-by-play only until the fight is over, right? And a big distinction I want to make is that doesn't mean when the last kill comes in. That means when the fight is irretrievably lost by one of the teams, right? Um, that's when you want to throw back to your color caster. And again, especially very, very important on control maps because teams get back to the point really, really quickly. So we'll let this play forward a little bit more. Kind of casually watch the action. Okay, at this point, this fight's over, right? Both supports are down for the team in red. One DPS is down. Everybody on the other team is full health, right? It would be a miracle, right? Especially in a dry fight like this when there are no ultimates online. It'd be a miracle if the red team came back from here, right? So at this point, as the color caster, as the play-by-play, wrap up as quickly as you can and throw it straight back to your color caster. Is that clear to everybody? Any questions? I'm just gonna let it play.
Absolutely clear.
Cool. So color caster's talking. Yeah, go ahead, Funky Monk.
Yeah, sorry to have another question, but
No, it's great. I want this to be conversational. I feel like that's the way you get the most out of it. So go for it.
If there might be like a chance for redemption in a fight, like say I don't know if drifters here, like the blue team, were like down there, I don't know, Diva and Lucio, but they had like EMP and Coalescence ready to go. Is
Right.
that like a winnable fight for them, or
Maybe, especially in Overwatch 2. Right now that we're in Overwatch 2, a player advantage is far more significant than it was in Overwatch 1, right? So I'd say, like, if it were Overwatch 1, I'd say, like, I would say, yeah, that fight is it could go back the other way. But in Overwatch 2, I feel like it's a lot less likely. So I think you can kind of hedge your bets that way in Overwatch 2, just a little bit. Now that's certainly the case, or it's certainly going to be the case, right? That there are going to be some fights that either somebody, a team can come back from, like you said, they might have EMP, Craft, Blossom, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And And in addition, there's going to be those fights where like just one player, just for whatever reason, has an insane pop off moment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Who knows, right? Like a Reaper might legitimately like 1v4, right? A team or something. So it happens, right? And you got to be prepared for it. And the way that you're prepared for it is you as a color caster, right? If it gets thrown to you, right? Play by play is like, yeah, this fight's over, right? It's done. They're not coming back from this, right? And they throw it to you, you're doing some coloring, you're talking about things, right? You're probably mentioning things like, you know, oh hey, there is the Grav, EMP, and Blossom, right? Just be prepared as color caster to throw it straight back to play by play at a moment's notice. Right.
If the is it courteous to just interrupt immediately as the thing happens, or do you want to wait for that like throw to happen?
Sorry, repeat the question one more time. Just yeah.
Is it fine to like interrupt the moment the play happens, or do you want to wait for your color caster to throw it back to you?
I would suggest doing something like a piggyback if you're the play-by-play.
Right.
Right.
So just kind of interject about the thing.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah. And then hope that your color caster then throws it to you. You know, they realize, oh shit, yeah, the thing is happening.
Okay.
Go back. Right. Yeah. 100%. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Continue on. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. We're seeing them push up practically to spawn. They do get one counter pick, but it's not much. So color again, colors talking. The Sombra looking like they want to do something here. So just be wary of that. Okay, so actually let's talk a little bit of like about how you gauge as a color caster when a fight is about to start. And it's going to look different kind of depending on the composition that's being run. So dive, that's going to be kind of the hardest to predict, right? Because just because of the nature of the composition, right? You're, you know, as a dive comp, you're looking for, you know, some abilities to get used. You're maybe looking for someone to be weak, someone out of position, something like that, right? So as a color caster, you kind of want to be keeping those things in mind, right? But something that actually might be even more useful to you as a color caster when you're watching dive is just look for the dive tank, right? Look for the dive tank and look to see if they have set themselves up, right? Because the way that dive works is you set up, you dive, and then you regroup. It's scout, setup, dive, right? Scout, setup, dive. You just kind of rinse and repeat that process. So once you see your dive tanks getting into position, right? Getting onto the high ground, they've reclaimed their cooldowns, things like that. That's when it's likely, you know, the fight's going to break out. If it's a brawl, you wanna wait until, you know, there's maybe you know, the Reinhardts or the Zaryas are just within distance of being able to hit each other, right? When the two teams are kind of squaring off, that's when you want to throw. Another great place is at chokes, right? You can see a team starting to kind of get positioned at a choke, and then they'll push through as a brawl team. Poke, a little bit harder, right? Because they're just going to be poking from a distance. There's, you know, not a huge moment that says like, oh, the fight is definitely breaking out when you're looking at poke. So with that one, as a color caster, you want to be kind of tuned into players' health a little bit more, right? Because a lot of time with poke, again, it's not called burst comp, right? It's called poke comp. So you're going to be whittling down the health of some of these players, in addition to resources, shields, armor, things like that. So you can look at those cues as a place to throw as a color caster to your play-by-play. Any questions about that?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
For play-by-play throwing to color during
Yes.
a prolonged fight. I remember
Yes.
thankfully the mode's gone, but I once casted a 6-minute 2 CP fight.
Oh, Jesus.
And after that I started to think, okay, maybe sometimes I throw to my color caster. Do you have any tips on that for color casters during fight?
Yeah. So this was actually, this was something I was gonna kind of like wait and bring up through the course of this video, but let's talk about it now because this is a great question and like something I really wanted to cover as well. And that's just the concept of a mid-fight throw, right? Because as play-by-play, there's gonna be situations where, like you said, we're on a control point, right? And yeah, just say we're here, and one of the teams just keeps coming on the point, getting control of it at the last moment, right? Keeps building up percentage. You think this fight's over, but they're just dragging out. They're still staying alive. One team can't clean up. So, what you're looking for as a play-by-play is a mid-fight throw. And this is something you're just going to have to develop a feel for in terms of when you want it to happen. I don't necessarily have, like in my head, like, oh yeah, when you've been talking for 20 seconds, make sure you throw. I actually have no clue. It's just you'll get that feeling from experience. But when you feel as a play-by-play you've been talking too long, throw it to your color caster for a mid-fight throw. And as the color caster, it's your job to give like 1 or 2 sentences of either play-by-play or color, and then throw it directly back to your play-by-play, right? And this accomplishes several things. For one, it gives your play-by-play a break, right? And your play-by-play may need it for a variety of reasons, right? They're just running out of breath. They just need to breathe for a moment. A lot of times, especially with Overwatch, since it is such a fast-paced game, your play-by-play might be falling behind the action a little bit, right? And so your play-by-play might just need a quick break to kind of recenter themselves in the fight. In addition, your audience is just going to get a little bit tired of hearing the same voice. So it's just good for the audience to kind of have that break from one caster and hear somebody else for a moment. So, yeah, as a color caster, just be ready for those mid-fight throws. And again, your job, just throw it right back to your play-by-play as quick as you can so that they can continue on with the action. And as far as whether or not you do a little bit of play-by-play or you do a little bit of color, again, that's going to be just a judgment call in the moment, right? If the action is really heavy, really intense, it could go either way, then you probably kind of want to stick with the play-by-play, right? If, though, for instance, it's like, okay, one team has probably lost this fight, they're just getting staggers in, right? And they're just trying to get as much time on the point as they possibly can, right? They're just trying to tick that percentage up as high as they can, then maybe you can provide a little bit of color there. Maybe you can say like, oh yeah, but again, the Dallas Fuel, they're doing a great job of stalling out this point. They're still getting percentage, even though the fight has gone towards the Houston Outlaws. They're still getting percentage here, and Lucio is going to be back in a moment with sound barrier, right? And then throw it straight back to your play-by-play, so you can get a little bit of color, just for context if it's something like that. But really, in the moment, it's going to be a judgment call. All right. Any other questions before we continue on? Jonas,
I
yeah.
have a question. In terms of you talked about fights all of a sudden changing. Like, even though like tank, DPS, and support on the one team are dead, one person just starts popping off and kills 3. How do you go about it if the fight has sort of like developed towards a close and you're handing it off to your other caster again? How would you go about getting the like tension and attention of the people back onto what's happening?
Good question. Good question. So what I like to do in those situations is kind of lean into the surprise factor, right? Because your play-by-play said, "Hey, this is over. This was done," right? And then all of a sudden, yeah, this one person starts popping off. Like that's going to be exciting. First off, right? Like that's just exciting. That's really cool to watch. Second, like I said, it's gonna be a surprise, right? You all in the booth are the experts, right? You're the ones, kind of steering the ship, as it were, for the audience. So, you know, team is surprised, you as casters are surprised, this was unexpected. Lean into that surprise, right? Just come back and be like, I can't believe this. The Sojourn, they shouldn't be doing this. They've got 1 kill, 2, 3, 4. They've gotten 4 kills. The point is still theirs, right? Really lean into that excitement. Really lean into how unexpected that is, right? And This is another point I wanted to make, and it's kind of a little bit related as well, so I'll bring it up here too. As a caster, you're gonna make mistakes, right? Like even the pros, even the top of the top, right? Like I was, I remember back when I first started casting, I was, really studying a lot of, the tier 1 casters really hard, and it was Uber shouts on Blizzard World. It was the last point of Blizzard World, right? And I heard him make 2 or 3 mistakes, right? Like just calling one player for one team versus the other, miscalling an ability, something like that. I don't know, but it was surprising to me. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I've heard Uber make mistakes, right? But then what I realized is like that's gonna happen all the time. You're gonna make mistakes. And by far the best thing to do when you make a mistake is just plow right through it. Don't acknowledge it, don't apologize for it. Just plow through it. The moment is over, other things are happening, and the attention is elsewhere, right? So when you make a mistake, because it's going to happen, just plow through it. Pretend it didn't even happen, right? Just go on to the next thing. Now, if there's of course exceptions to this. If there's like an egregious mistake, then do your best to call it out, or not necessarily call it out, but just like correct the mistake, right? Either that your co-caster made or you made, right? But do it when the action isn't happening, right? Do it at an appropriate place. Like, don't interrupt the flow of the cast or anything to, correct this mistake, because there will be times, but they'll be few and far between, right? For the most part, just ignore them, just carry on, plow through. All right. Let's see here. Move forward a little bit in this. Actually, hold on. I'm gonna pause here for a second. I'm gonna review my notes because we've got about 15 or so minutes left, and I want to make sure I get on to one of my other topics. So give me just a moment.
In the meantime, I like
Yeah.
Funky Monkey's comment. I have a feeling that egregious mistake is shorthand for oops, I swore mid broadcast.
I mean, that can be, yeah. Like, I'm actually struggling to find what I feel like, would be a mistake like that. I'm trying to think of an example because they're there, they happen, right? But they're very, very few and far between.
So the best tip is like just ignore it, keep going, unless
Yeah.
it's like something that you actually have to acknowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe you got like the overall score of the series wrong, right? Maybe like it's a tied series of 2. And your caster should be like, actually, it's 2-1, or like something like that. That's the kind of mistake you're gonna want to try and correct, But yeah, for the most part, you name a player wrong, you use the wrong ability name, you say one player is on the other team. It's not a big deal. Just plow through, keep going. Where did my notes go? Oh, here they are. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna switch gears here a little bit. So before we do that, we're not gonna talk about kind of the nuts and bolts of a cast too much more. I want to go into talking about a reel, right? And what goes into making a good reel, what you're looking to do with a reel. So before we do that transition, because that's a pretty big one, any other questions about just the nuts and bolts of a cast? And again, hope you got some new stuff out of this. For some of you, this might have been a lot of review, so I apologize for that. But again, really want to make sure we set the foundations for everybody. So yeah, okay, cool. Looks like we got a few questions while I get this up. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have?
Oh,
Okay.
you
No, you go.
you
You go. I've
Okay.
asked. I have asked questions already. You go ahead.
All right. I've been casting in places where they have their own robust system for like player information and names and such, but a lot of the time the players will play on a different account, and the
Oh
producer will say,
God.
"Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
Geo, Billy Bob is playing on Squealy Pig." And I'm like, well, I don't really know what to do with that information because if I start calling them Billy Bob, no one's going to know what I mean. Have you had experience of that? What would you do in
Yeah.
that situation?
Yeah. 100%. 100% had experience with that, and I hate it. I hate it when it happens. It's irritating, but it happens frequently, so you got to deal with it, right? Um, the best thing to do with that is to call them by the name that they have in the game, in my opinion, right? Because that's what the audience sees, right? And think about it this way, right? Like if there's somebody who's watching the broadcast for, the very first time, right? This is the first time they've tuned into this tournament. They're not gonna know, like, oh yeah, Squidly Bob is actually Joe Schmo in chat, right? Like they're not gonna know who Squidly Bob was beforehand, right? They're not gonna have any of this context, any of this history. So they're just gonna be confused. So use the name that's on the screen, right? That's my suggestion. Is just use that name. You can mention once or twice. I think like right off the bat, be like, oh yeah, Joe Schmo who's playing under an alt account Squiddly Bob today, right? You can do that once or twice, but then just drop it,
Yeah.
right? That's my suggestion there. Yeah.
All right.
And Funky Monk. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of what I affectionately call play-by-play verbal diarrhea, is there a specific way that you can sort of like increase how eloquent it is, or is it just like does it just like come with time?
Both, right? It will come with time, right? It just will. But there's certainly things you can do to speed up the process. One of my favorite exercises. So I teach another workshop and series of workshops called Improv for Casters, because my very start into like doing anything kind of theatrical or in front of people, outside of like presentations in school or whatever, was an improv course, and so I've taken a lot of exercises from improv, modified them for casting, and used as a way to help people, kind of accelerate some of these processes. So, what I found to be really useful for that is I'll take if I'm doing like a practice cast with a friend, or even just myself, right? I'll take like a fight or an engagement, nothing too terribly long, so just like one fight, one engagement, and cast that at like half speed, right? Then go through, after that fight's over, pause, rewind, go back to the beginning of that fight, and then cast it at normal speed, saying exactly the same thing you said before. Or, well, not exactly the same thing, but, getting across the same ideas and the same points, right? So do that at normal speed, pause it at the end of the fight, go back again, and then try and cast it at like 1.5 or double speed, right? And again, just trying to get out those same points that you got, but doing it in less time, doing it more succinctly. So that's been a really powerful exercise for me and for some other people that I've worked with, that I think kind of helps with that issue. If I'm understanding what you mean by like verbal diarrhea, because like I kind of, to me, I call it like word salad. Like
Yeah,
to me, it's just
it's like
like,
talking and then you keep talking and then you really can't stop yourself from talking and like that and just kind of keep going for a while.
Yeah, and and you've gone from A to B to X to Y to 3 to triangle to, you've gone all over the place as well, right? So yeah, that's what that's an exercise I found really useful. Yeah.
Is there anywhere in specific I can check out the improv for casters thing, or is that
Yeah, so if you follow me on Twitter,
right?
or join my Discord. Either one.
I
And
should probably make a Twitter account.
yeah, that's fair. So actually, in online events,
Okay.
I'm gonna drop both my Twitter and an invite to my Discord. So with the invite to my Discord, just I've got like a big, roles channel or whatever.
Alright.
So let's see here. We'll make this a never expires link.
Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, no problem. So just sign up for like, my Twitter notifications, things like that. Just like general news or whatever in my Discord. And
Sure.
you'll see, when I post about different things like this that I'm going to do. So give me a second. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna drop it in online events. Oh, Lucas, thank you so much. By the way, I saw your note, Lucas. It's great to see you. Good to see a familiar face. Cool. So there's the invite to my Discord. Like I said, just drop in, and you'll need to visit the rules first, so agree to the rules, and then there's a
Yeah,
roles
that's right.
channel as well. So cool. And I think there was one other person. Yeah, Crumble. Looks like you had a question as well.
Yeah, hi. Just kind of a general question, really. What techniques would you recommend, and what things would you kind of recommend to use when? Because I feel like a lot of the time when color casting, it's easy to get into the kind of rinse and repeat habit of just they have this, and then just handing it off to your play-by-play, and it can kind of get
Yeah,
a bit boring sometimes.
a bit samey.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah,
So
yeah.
What would you kind of recommend in order to counteract that? Keep the color casting fresh and interesting for the audience.
I've got a list for you. So hold on a second. Yeah, I'm gonna pull this up and I'm gonna drop that in chat. So give me just a second to find it. Where is it? Maybe it's this like random. Oh, beautiful! It's this random untitled document in my casting workshop folder. So I'm gonna name this real quick after I drop it into chat. But here are all the things. I'm dropping it in online events again. Here's just something. These are ways you can get away from like just they've got this ultimate and this ultimate, right? Here are the things you can talk about as a color caster, or
Choices.
Hold on a second. I think I did this for there we go. Hero choices. That's not how you spell hero. Hold on. There we go. That's better. Yeah. So this isn't exhaustive by any means, but it should at least, be a good jumping off place for you, right? Like these are things you can talk about. One of my favorite ones is actually duels as a color caster. That I think that's a fantastic one, is talking about duels, right? Because, not only can you talk about, again, like what what ultimates maybe the heroes involved in these duels have, but you can talk about like the history over the course of the match. You can talk about the history over the course of the game, whatever, right? You've got like a lot of stuff to kind of pull from there. So that's one of my favorites. Absolutely one of my favorites is to talk about duels. So yeah, just use this. That should help you, at least get you started, and you'll come up with more of your own, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you
over time. Yeah, you bet.
If
All
I'm not
right.
mistaken, Frost, you were muted before. Did you have a question, perhaps?
Oh, thank you,
no.
Fabius. Yeah.
So when Gio asked a question, I was going to piggyback off it, but Juggle answered it before I could ask it.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
I actually have a question myself.
Yeah. Shoot.
What if there is, like, you're casting a team or a player that has a name that can sound like something else? As an example, we have one of our teams that is called Captain Salty Seaman.
Oh,
It's
course.
like I personally, like, how would you go about addressing it?
Yeah, so I would the first thing you want to do there is think about your audience, right? So, for instance, there'd be like some community tournaments where, that would have been fine to say, right? Like, wouldn't have mattered at all, right? It's a tournament where, kind of like anything goes, whatever. For more, I don't know if I want to say necessarily like prestigious tournaments or maybe just like more serious tournaments. What I would do is I will like reference the fact that it's kind of inappropriate, right? Just kind of lightly. And then I would say, we're going to call this team captain for the rest of the broadcast.
Okay, makes sense. Because
Yes. Yeah.
what I ended up doing was calling them CSS, which sounded like I was
Yeah.
talking about a file all the time. But yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's exactly how you want to handle it there. Yeah. Is just acknowledge that it's inappropriate somehow, and then say we're just gonna call him this for the rest of the cast. Yeah, that's the way to go. Cool. I've got my casting reel up, so we are at the end time for this, but I would like to get this a little bit out. So for those of you who can stick around for a few extra minutes, and want to, please feel free to do so, because I'll talk just a little bit about making a reel and kind of what you're looking for in a reel. But first, we're just gonna watch it just so you can kind of see, take a look at mine, and I'll be honest, this is like the very first reel I've actually been satisfied with and happy with that I've made so far. I've had like 3 or 4, but this one I feel like, okay, I finally kind of hit the formula that I want. So, yep, I'm gonna unmute and play it. Gonna be Suyo now, layering a lot of damage with that tack visor, but not gonna find any kills from it. Could be this gravitic flux that ends up doing it. Again, Amaze having to split his attention between the point and the choke as well. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and family beyond the binary, good evening and welcome back to the CECC Last Chance Qualifiers. If you're just joining us, my name Warren JuggleGod, Hammond, joined on the mic again by South Beach. And are you ready for this next matchup? That's going to allow equal friends to really start to group up and take a more advantageous position, but it's not gonna matter if the shield is down and the hammer hits the ground. Team Peps continue to move on. They've got a minute left and just one more fight to make it through. Oh, the knife's gonna miss. Quanzi, they're gonna be able to get 3 off that corner. Everybody swung one at a time, and Quanzi has to be happy about that because they are 1 away now from an ace as well. They just have to take out this Sova. And we're gonna see a lead again for Nefarious. They seem to have figured out a little bit about what's going on here. They're gonna make it 2! The lead now extending to 2! It's going to center around Havana because to me, that was the turning point of the series. Knockdown, drag him out of air, no clear advantage going to either side. What was the mood like? Did you all know that a win was incoming?
We definitely knew that we were there. Like, mentally, we were there.
Can they come away with it? They're going to connect for 1 kill. It's got to be a 5K. It's got to be an ace. Keep Butler in this map. I see lead again. T-Sin, but it's gonna go the other way around. Wichita State with a tremendous comeback, taking us to map number 3. We've got 5 seconds left to go. This is all but over. Kai trying to even things up, but it's not gonna be there. 1 second left to go. This game goes the way of Bowling Green. They take the win at the last moment, denying the reverse sweep from Butler University. Overtime on the brink. It has been triggered. Sirion fires Torthik. That is a huge pick already. That means it's going to be up to Ace and this Deadeye to come in big, but it can't. Overtime, taking down nobody in a position to touch. This is just an absolute slaughter, and Team Peps is going to equalize the scoreline in this series. 4v2 right now. Check Bench is getting oh so close to taking this entire tournament. But it's gonna be Kendrax who comes in huge for a clash. It's a 2v2 now. Make that a 2v1. It's just Kendrax left. That's gonna do it. That's gonna be the tournament for the Check Bench. Congratulations. All right, so Hope you enjoyed that. But more importantly, let's dive into a little bit about like, just the structure of a reel and kind of what you're looking for and what you're looking to do with a reel. So let's see here. I'm actually gonna back it up. I'm gonna keep this screen up. The first thing you want to do is you want to be attention grabbing, like right off the bat, right? So your first clip, you want to make sure that that is so engaging, so interesting that the audience, whoever's watching it, is really looking forward to seeing the rest of this. And so, of course, what I decided to go with here was lean into the juggling. I just happened to have this. I went on this show done by Los, who's another great caster, where he just interviews casters. He does like a little talk show thing with them. And he had just surprised me during, and he was like, "All right, so we're gonna do something. You have no idea this is about to happen." And he made me juggle while casting, and so it ended up being this great clip and something really really unique about me. And so I put it up front because this, it sets me apart, right? It shows something unique about me, interesting about me, and it's definitely attention grabbing. So you want to try and lead with something like that. Then for the next few clips, and honestly, within that first minute, to me, like that first minute is what's most important in your reel, right? Because a lot of people, they're not even going to watch your entire reel, right? Like this one is almost 3 minutes, and honestly, I feel like it's a little too long. I think it should be 2.5, right? 2.5 should is kind of like ideal. But even with 2.5, most people are only going to watch like the first half of it. So I want that first minute to be really high quality stuff, shows off, what I bring to the table as a caster. So what I'd encourage you to do, is sometime do a review of one of your casts, right? And then afterwards, just sit down with like pen and paper just on your computer and write down different things you noticed about yourself that you thought you did really well, right? Like you thought you brought a lot of hype, you thought your analysis was really good. You you use really descriptive language, you use a lot of good imagery, things like that. Whatever it is that you see in yourself, write that down on the list and then search out clips that kind of highlight that, right? So for me, that very first clip, I liked just, the phrase I came up with, the moment, it doesn't matter if the shield is down and the hammer hits the ground, right? I was like, hey, that was a nice turn of phrase. I want to show that, I want to show that, hey, in, the heat of the moment during this excitement, I can, not only call what's happening, but, use some imagery, or not necessarily imagery, but just a nice play on words. I guess that wasn't necessarily my first clip. My very first clip was me introducing a show. And this is pretty standard. I think it's kind of, you can take it or leave it. I think you don't have to have a moment like this where you're like introducing yourself during your reel. But I think it's nice. It shows that you're comfortable opening up a show, things like that. Let's see here. I'm just going to kind of click through it a little bit. Another thing you want to try and do, so let's see here, right? This was the CECC Last Chance Qualifier. Very next clip is going to be, let's see here, this was EGF, another one of the college leagues I cast for, right? And then moving forward, this was, I believe, Open Division. Yeah, I think this was an Open Division cast for Overwatch. So right off the bat, too, I've shown that, I work in a lot of different places, right? I've highlighted the fact that, I'm good enough that multiple people have hired me from multiple organizations. So that's important to highlight as well. So we'll skip forward a little bit more. And I wanted to lead with Overwatch as well because it's also my strongest game as a caster, right? So definitely lead with strength. Then transitioned into a Valorant clip. And then from there, we go to Rocket League, right? And yeah, I don't know if you can see the timestamp on my window or not, but this is literally at exactly a minute, right? So within that minute, I've shown something exciting, something eye-catching, something engaging, something that makes you want to watch more. Introduced myself so then I know how to open a show. Shown 3 different organizations I cast for and all 3 games that I cast, all within that first minute. So this is the kind of way that you want to look at your reel, right? Is you want to try and cram in, honestly, as much information about yourself as you possibly can in as many different ways as you can into that first minute, right? Because again, people likely only going to watch a little bit of it. And one of the reasons you really, I think, want to kind of cram it with information like this is because you don't necessarily know what a TO or what a talent manager is looking for, right? So you want to try and show them as many different sides of yourself as you can. Maybe this TO really values the fact that, like, oh, hey, you cast for the CEC Last Chance Qualifier. Love that event. I know the people who work on it, right? So if they like you, I like you, right? They could be looking for that. Maybe they're looking for, the TO is like, oh, we've only got this much budget. I can only bring in one caster, but I need them to cover multiple games. Beautiful. This person covers multiple games, right? So, having a lot of information in there in that first minute, very, very important. Last thing I will mention from there, I'm just looking for different plays. Oh, this was a good one, actually. That I forgot to mention. Showing that you can interview people is really, really valuable as well, right? So I looked for a clip of an interview that I just thought went really, really well. This guy at Wasp is just fantastic. I've cast him several times, and he was always just a phenomenal person to interview. So had a lot of material to pull from there. So yeah, if you've got memorable interviews, remember those for sure. Let's see here, and then. Yeah, last thing I'll mention, just make sure you end with a card that gives all your information. So for the people who do watch the whole thing, they then know how to get in touch with you. So make it easy, right? Don't make it hard for people to track you down or get the information. Make it easy for them. Yeah. And so I think I'll stop there for today. But any final questions about the reel, about casting, about anything?
I have actually a segue question that our manager kind of wants to know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, we're talking about what makes a good show reel to advertise yourself, but how would you go about advancing in your casting career? Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
what would you do?
Yeah,
to-
to kind of like go from tier 4 to tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1, right?
Exactly.
Like that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Good question. Good question. Honestly, the most important thing I think is to just always be improving, always be honing your craft, right? So that's number 1, right? There's other things you can do to advance, your career, but number 1, the most important is to always be practicing. You can always improve, right? And even if, let's say you've hit that potential, like I am the best caster that there can possibly be, right? Well, games change, right? The scene changes, casting changes, right? It's a living, breathing entity. So you have to be ready to change, right? It's a oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a common saying, but the only constant in life is change, right? That's very, very true in casting as well. So styles change, preferences change. You've always got to be improving. You've always got to be ready to adapt. So at minimum, you got to be doing that. Next thing is networking, right? And it's honestly a lot of times as simple as, you're working with one org being like, hey, do you know of any other tournaments that run the same game? Any other TOs that you know and have worked with or like, right? Because it's a smaller community, right? So people know each other, and people are happy to give recommendations, help you find new places to cast. Another huge one. I'm gonna drop a link for this server in chat as well. The broadcast.gg server that is just a tremendous resource to have in general. So you can find opportunities here. Again, just dropping it in online events. You can find opportunities here. Well, that I didn't actually copy it. What the hell? You can find events. You can find people who are willing to give you VOD reviews and critiques. Definitely, I think the most useful place I have found. Oh, okay, there we go. I just didn't hit copy. Cool. And I'm always going back there. And I mean, you see people in the tier 1 scene, in broadcast DG, right? Like it's people are there. There we go. There's the invite to broadcast.gg. So definitely go there. Definitely use that resource. In addition, seeking out VOD reviews from more experienced casters. Honestly, I think that's one of the best ways to network and find more opportunities, right? This is make friends with more casters and with casters who, yeah, like you respect and who you've asked for like a VOD review, things like that, right? I've had lots of opportunities come my way simply because of doing that, right? And a lot of these casters are really, really approachable, right? You all know Necra, right, from Overwatch League this year? She actually gave me my very first VOD review, right? Way back, a couple years ago. So she's super kind, super approachable. Avril does VOD reviews, but his are brutal. So be prepared if you reach out to Avril for a VOD review. You're going to be hurting afterwards. It's not a pleasant experience, but you'll learn. Who else? Uber Shouts even. I actually reached out to Uber recently and he has agreed to do a VOD review with me. So, don't be afraid to reach out to these tier 1 casters. Like they're willing to help up and coming talent as well. Bruposaurus, if he's like an OG caster. Like this guy was one of the, like he was there when casting kind of became a thing. Very, very kind guy, very knowledgeable, very willing to help out. So yeah, those would be kind of my main suggestions on how to advance your career as a caster. Is always be improving your craft, networking, and honestly just keep up to date with broadcast.gg. Really. Just and in particular in that Discord, you're gonna really want to look at the unpaid and paid opportunities channel, right? Because that's like people post in there constantly looking for casters. So yeah, you'll be able to find work there. Yeah. See several people unmuted, so yeah, let's go for it. More questions. Zima, I don't think we've heard from you yet, so yeah.
Hello. I've never casted before. My question was, how do you get into casting? Like, what do you do?
Like how do you like just literally get to your very first cast?
Yeah, who do you give blood to to get your first cast? I don't know.
Yeah. Honestly, go to broadcast GG and look in the unpaid opportunities. That's the place to go. Like people post there all the time and they'll literally say like no experience necessary.
Yeah, if
Right?
I
Just
could
come in and cast.
Yeah, if I could piggyback off of that. Yeah, I see a few new names here. A51 is a brilliant place to learn casting.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
a host of teams and we try and cast the scrims. That's how I learned. I kind of learned by just doing. Heller at one point was like, "Hey, do you come cast?" I was like, "I guess I'll try it." And now, like, I've had paid opportunities. So definitely, A51's a good place to sharpen your axe. Because you get experience producing, observing, and casting sometimes here at the same time. And then you get solo opportunities. The first time I left A51 went to Tranquility, the 70 viewers and the other casters' Wi-Fi dropped. But because I had done solo casting in A51, I was kind of prepared for it, and people kind of noticed. So definitely get in touch with, I don't know, staff here.
Who
Yeah.
would you Spag, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Spag.
definitely,
Spag.
definitely drop a DM to Spag. He'll show you the ropes.
Yep, I'll DM Xima this information because we
Okay.
are still looking for new talents. So
I think
don't hesitate.
General's already put the tag in online.
Yeah.
events.
Yep. Don't
I
hesitate.
honestly
to contact
just
me.
wanna like start casting because I've been putting off like voice training, like voice feminization for like ages, and maybe if I start doing this, I will actually do it. So
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Yeah. I'm
No pressure,
gonna
quite like
drop.
self-imposed pressure.
I'm gonna drop 2 orgs that I cast for, or that I have in the past, that are really, really open to new casters as well. And the first one is Hyperion, and the second one is Overwatch Tranquility. And these are NA as well, so I don't, know exactly how useful this will be to everybody, but I at least want to put that out there. So, I'm gonna write that in chat right now.
Yeah,
Tranquility has. Oh, sorry.
No, you do it.
We
You
were
do
going to say the same thing. That
Yeah.
Tranquility also has EU divisions. So
Oh, they
if you're
do.
not
That's
comfortable-
right.
Yes, I cast for them.
Yeah.
Ha!
Yeah. I'd forgotten. Yeah, they totally
Yes.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
Tranquil-
just started, I think, this season.
They
Yeah.
aren't quite as
Yeah.
diverse. They're like Tuesdays and Thursdays at like 7:30 GMT. So that's like 8 o'clock Central European, I believe. Yes. So
Cool.
8
Yeah.
o'clock Central European is generally when the call times are. So if you want to just to fit that in your schedule, if you if you want to.
So,
I feel like I'm selling out here.
yeah. Does someone have any other
I don't know.
questions?
I for some reason enjoy selling out. I don't know why.
Does someone have any other questions related to casting?
I would like to know from you, JuggleGod. First of all, which Overwatch League season do you think was the best one in terms of casting? For
Ooh.
me, it was season 2, definitely. I think the
Ooh.
casting talent we had in season 2 were definitely the best in terms of making it watchable. Well, Goats wasn't watchable at all. And then I would like to know from all the casting duos we had in Overwatch League, which one is your favorite? Because mine definitely has to be Citro and Bren.
Yeah. So hilariously, I agree with you on both counts. I think season 2 was the best casting we saw for Overwatch League. With honestly this season being, I think, a close second. And yeah, Sideshow and Bren. I love those two. Because they're like they're what I want to kind of be as a caster, right? Because I felt like, while they didn't necessarily have that like grand finals finish and sparkle that Uber and Mr. X do, right? They're funny, they're engaging. I feel like I get to know them more as people than I do Uber and Mr. X, who, I think as far as like technical casting, like you want to close out, you want your grand finals cast to be an absolute banger, right? Go to Uber and Mr. X, right? But for, I don't know, just general entertainment value, definitely Sideshow and Brent. I absolutely love those two. Yeah, they're my favorite. And I was so sad to see them leave Overwatch, but I love getting to watch them in Valorant now. So, yeah.
So, anyone else? Got any questions?
How about your favorite current Overwatch League caster duo? Because I know mine is definitely Lemon Kiwi and Leg Day. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion or not. I think they're by far the best in my opinion, but I'd love to know who you think is the best caster duo at the moment.
Okay, this is weird, but I gotta agree with you again. Like, honestly, like you took the words right out of my mouth. I
Leg
love
Day's
Lemon Kiwi and Leg Day.
Damn, we are
Because I feel
basic.
like they kind of like fill that gap that was left by Sideshow and
Yeah.
Bren. Right? Because
Yeah.
again, those two are so personable, they're very funny, they're very entertaining. They just bring more to a broadcast, right? Than a lot of the other casters, right? So we're great, right? Like Achilleos, to me, I always talk about him as like, he's the prototypical example to me of like somebody who just like, he has the nuts and bolts of casting down pat. He is so good at it. I mean, you see him in multiple titles too. right?
That's
But
a
I
Texas
don't
joke,
get
yeah.
that same kind of personableness, right? That I do from like Leg Day and Lemon Kiwi. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If anyone doesn't have any questions, I'll actually ask one myself.
Yeah,
This one
go
is
for it.
a
Go for it.
more sort of serious one. We were
Mhm.
talking about advancing in the career, that changing
Mm.
constantly, adapting is necessary. Talking about change, what skill set need to change from Overwatch 1 into Overwatch 2? Is there anything in particular?
Ooh, this is a good question. I haven't actually thought about this like distinctly yet. So give me a moment to kind of like organize my thoughts because there are differences. And I can't quite put my finger on what they are exactly at the moment, but let me think about that. Okay. The biggest difference, right? And we've actually we've already talked about this a little bit. Is the fact that like a singular pick is way more impactful in Overwatch 2. Way more impactful. So as a play-by-play, you have to be a little. It's almost like the end of the fight comes a little bit earlier now. Because I think especially if you're looking at like higher tier play, when that first pick comes in, like it honestly feels to me like 70-80% of the time, the team that gets the first pick is gonna win that fight, right? Like it has shifted dramatically in that direction since we went to 5v5 versus 6v6. Um, in addition, like the moment a tank goes down, I feel like the fights are lost almost irretrievably. So as far as like a singular biggest difference, I think it's the tempo of the fights and just the impact of one pick, right? And so in some ways that makes your job harder as a play-by-play because you've kind of got like less to work on, but you still need to be entertaining and engaging, right? So how do you do that after that first pick comes in? And my strategy has been to honestly kind of kick the excitement level and the hype level up a little bit quicker, right? Because in Overwatch 1, it was almost like, oh, a pick comes in. Like, sometimes a pick would come in and the color caster would be talking and they wouldn't even throw because it was that inconsequential, right? But here in Overwatch 2, that's just not the case. Like, if a color caster, I think, like, talks through, like, one pick and continues talking, the fight just might be over. And in fact, I've had that experience a couple of times, even recently casting with a couple people, where it's like, yeah, the color caster just kind of like plowed through, an entire fight with color commentary about the previous fight. And so I was like, well, shit, now we're behind an entire fight. What do we do? So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And it's because of multiple things as well, right? Fights are just over quicker. So you kind of got to get that hype up, that excitement up, and just follow the, kind of follow that trail, right? That opening pick is leading into, because again, it's most likely going to lead to the outcome of a victory for that team that got the first pick.
Absolutely spotless, clear.
What's that?
No, absolutely clear.
Oh yeah, cool.
Anyone else has got any questions? Oh, Gio, I see you have unmuted.
I know we're running quite late, but talking about caster real, how much tips you have for a caster CV?
Oh yeah, here we go. I'll drop mine in chat, real quick. Let's see here. Stop sharing my screen. And actually, I need to update mine. That's actually one thing that's important that I don't do as well as I should, is like constantly be updating your resume. Because like mine, you'll see I've had several things that that I've done recently that I need to add to this and kind of replace. All right, I'm dropping it in online events. Actually, I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and stream it too. Oh crap! I just moved something. Okay, there we go. Casting resume. Okay, cool. So I use Canva. It's a great service. It's really easy to make. I think kind of more engaging looking resumes. So it's very different from a traditional resume, right? Where I think like a lot of times you'll have like blocks of text where you're talking about yourself. Like really, you just want to show as much work as you possibly can and what you've done, right? So if you look over kind of on the right side of mine, it's just all kind of like the biggest places I've cast, right? So a lot of times it would be so like let's look at my Overwatch, right? For 21 and 2022, cast for EGF, ECAC, and ECC. I need to add an ace to that as well. So I'll talk about orgs, but then if you go up above a little bit, like I did this LAN, I did Open Division, right? So I kind of like picked and chose between orgs that I've casted for and also major events. You want to talk about the games that you've casted. I might actually be getting rid of the About Me section as well. I don't think I necessarily need that anymore. You definitely want to have, all your contact information up front. At the very top as well, I've got a link to my casting reel and my an example cast, just like just one cast from start to finish. This is really important because again, like I think you really just make it easy, right? Don't make people search out information, right? Put a link to your casting reel in your resume. Let's see here. I wonder if I still got. Actually, I'll leave that up for a second and search in another window. Let's see here. I was trying to see if I could find Rich Rad's resume online because he's got a really, really good one. And his is kind of like what I want mine to look like. So I'm just going to go check out his Twitter. Oh, shoot. He doesn't have a link to it on his Twitter. Oh, wait. Yes, he does. Hold on. This is what people are moving towards more, even over a resume. So hold on. Am I still sharing the right screen? Okay, cool. I am. Is doing a more of a portfolio, right? And so Rich Rad on his site, he's just got like his site is basically his resume, right? Or his portfolio. So the landing page has his reel, right? Then you click over towards experience, right? Here's a little bit about him. Here's the titles he casts. Here's who he's cast for, and here are the major events. So there's kind of like some parallelism between like what he did and what I did. And for context as well, like Rich Rad is a good friend. He's been a mentor for me as well. So there's a reason there's kind of this parallelism as well, because this is kind of what he told me too. So yeah, he's got all of that, game titles, client history, major events that he's done. And then here's just more things that you can see that he does, right? Because not only does he do casting, he does voiceovers, things like that. So, this is, I guess, kind of like two examples that you can look at, right? A little bit more minimal approach. So from my side with just the resume, but you could go kind of like all out with this portfolio style, which again is kind of the way the industry has been moving, is to do something a little bit more like this. So, yeah.
Oh, if does anyone have any more questions for JuggleGod?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it,
Excellent.
Nightmare.
Yeah, what's up?
I I was just about the casting reel.
Mhm.
I'm primarily more of a color caster. I was just wondering, like, what kind of clips would you be putting in for your kind of casting reel when, you're not typically the main guy talking, and you don't quite get the same kind of flashy lines as the play-by-play.
Right. So one thing that's I think important for color casters as well is to show kind of hype moments, right? And when I was talking before, you know, as a color caster, you're going to have to do some play by play at some point, right? Oh, this is a big thing that I wanted to mention. And I'm glad that this led to it. As a caster, you want to do what is best for the cast, not what is best for you as a caster, right? Your primary goal should be, doing the best show that you possibly can, putting on the best cast possible. And so that, again, basically means don't try to hog the limelight. Don't try to hog the spotlight, right? But yeah, again, going back to more so directly to your question, look for those moments, right, as a color caster where you've had to kind of fill in and do a little bit of play-by-play as a color caster, because people will be looking for that, right? They still want to know that you can kind of bring out hype moments, that you can still highlight big plays, things like that. But for the most part, I would say look for moments where you're not only giving very accurate analysis and concise analysis, but also moments that let your personality come through a little bit more as a color caster as well. Because right, like, this is the challenge in putting together a color caster reel, is that it's not going to be the big flashy hype moments for the most part, right? You need to show that again, your analysis is good, your analysis is short and concise, and that you're bringing more to the table than just that. So whether it's your personality, whether it's clever plays on words, your comedy, whatever it is that kind of makes you, that's what you want to highlight. So I'm gonna be honest, like, honestly, making a color casting reel, I think, is a lot more difficult. So it's unfortunate, but I think that's just, that's the reality of the situation. So I would suggest also reaching out to someone like Kenobi with this exact same question. Reach out to some other color casters, because they're gonna give you a much better idea than I can, right? Like, I've seen color casting reels, I know generally what you're looking for, but the specifics of it, the nitty gritty, kind of the the little tweaks that you want to give, someone like Kenobi, someone like Leg Day, they're going to be able to give you a much better answer than I can as to what you're looking for in a color casting reel.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, does anyone have any more questions?
I'm sorry to say that I have 3. So if we're really pushed for time, then
I'm not.
I'll probably like PM them to you if that's
Yeah.
better. But
Either way's fine. And actually, let me interject real quick before you get to your questions as well, just in case some people have to run. I'm going to be casting Open Division basically right after this. Like, my call time is 2 p.m. my time, which is in about 20 minutes from now. So in about an hour and 20 minutes, you can watch me cast Open Division. I'll be with Dividing, he is a phenomenal color caster. As well. So yeah, come check that out. And if you do, shoot me a message. Let me know you're there. Say something in chat as well.
Yes.
But yeah, if you want to see like some of these
now I have a
principles,
fourth question.
if you want to see some of these principles in play and also see me make mistakes and how I handle them, definitely tune in. But yeah,
Okay.
go ahead, Funky Monk. I've got time. I like, honestly, I can do this basically right up until 2 p.m. because
Okay,
it's an hour call time. So
I'll start
yeah.
with the more. I'll start with the more general stuff. Do you have any
Cool.
advice in particular for hosting? I've personally found that writing down an intro helps, but do you have any like advice for quote unquote impromptu ad reads or like closing things off and whatnot, or like interviews?
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna write down a couple of things there because you're good. Because not only do you have 4 questions, but your first question was like a multi-part question. So, hold on, let me write down a couple things because you mentioned ad reads. What were the other things you said? Like handling ad reads, something
I
else.
have. Sorry, they just fall out of me. I don't know what else. I don't know what to do about it.
That's fine. That's fine. No
I
worries.
did
No
say I
worries.
have play-by-play verbal diarrhea.
Yeah,
It extends
exactly.
to other aspects of my life.
So I'm sorry, I forgot what the original question was. Can you give it to me one more time?
Do you have advice for hosting events when you don't have somebody like a desk to throw it back to?
Right.
For like, ad reads, you know, doing introductions for players.
Yeah.
What else did I mention? Like closing out the events,
Yeah. Cool.
This is why I asked if you wanted me to PM.
No. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
So hosting, I've only gotten to do a couple of times as a caster. But in my previous career, right, where I was a professional juggler, I've probably been in I've emceed at this point at least 1,000 shows, right? And so there's a lot of parallels between the two. But one of the biggest things is as a host, you really, really need to be prepared. You've really got to do your homework beforehand, right? So, come to the broadcast knowing the teams that you're going to be casting, trying to do as much research as you can on the teams and the players and the tournament, right? So know the nuts and bolts of the tournament, the rules, things like that. And in addition, if you can, try to get together with production, your producer, and see if you can go through a run of show with them, right? So ask them, okay, cool, what scenes do you have? What order do you want to go in? Can I call, for different screens if I want to? Can I call to bring up a bracket? Will you have that ready, or do we need to go go through it in this order? Right. So I think as a host, you're gonna have a lot more upfront work that you need to do. Because you're gonna want to come with questions, right, to ask your desk. As far as like the general approach to being a host, the biggest thing to keep in mind, I think, is it's not about you, right? It's about the other people on the desk and the game, the casters, right? So you want to try and give as much focus as you can to those individuals, right? It's good to interject your own thoughts, your own opinions, and things like that. But what's more important is that you ask good questions, right? And you highlight the people on your desk, right? Because you're bringing them in kind of as the experts, right? So you want to kind of steer the ship, as it were, and let them do like most of the talking, if that makes sense. As far as ad reads are concerned, a lot of times, or at least my experience so far with ad reads and production, is they're going to have like a specific place that they want you to do the ad read. And a lot of times like a very specific script as well. So just, make sure in your outline, your run of show, whatever you're using, that you know exactly when and where those are supposed to come. Because those are really, really important to hit.
I've never really been given a script. I've just genuinely just been asked, "Hey, can you mention these while you're like in breaks
really?
and stuff?" Yeah, I remember the last cast I did. I came up with a segue where, well, if you like this team capping, then you can head on over to the shop and buy a cap with the logo on it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I did it in
That's
this sort of
great.
voice, and that was pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, like
Do it
honestly,
if you
that's
want.
great.
I'm
And
not
that's
being
probably all
paid
you
for
need.
this.
Yeah, like that's honestly probably all you need. Like, I think the
Okay.
thing with ad reads too is you want to keep them short and sweet and simple, too. Because like nobody is actually here for the ads. Like it's kind of like I don't know if I
Yeah.
would say it's a necessary evil, of a lot of these broadcasts. But you want to highlight them, but you want to move past them as quick as you can.
For
as
some
well.
reason, I enjoy them. I don't know why. I have like a very ironic enjoyment in selling out. Look,
Gotcha,
guys,
gotcha.
I'm selling out. Like kind of a.
Right. Well, then, yeah, I don't know. To keep it to a minimum there. You might have to put the brakes on yourself a little bit. But let's talk
Yeah.
about like intros and closing events as well. So, I have like a very specific introduction that I do at the beginning of every broadcast. If I'm not given other instructions, right? If I'm given other instructions, I'll open the show how they want. But the intro I think is often overlooked and pretty important as well because it's the first impression, right? It's the first impression people are going to have of you on cast, and we all know those are very, very important. So
That was good that
putting
I
a
have one
little
written
extra
down then.
time, yeah, putting a little extra time into it, I think is good. I typically, I'll write down like a couple of notes for myself. I won't necessarily write down like a full script because then sometimes it comes out feeling rehearsed, and you want it to kind of feel natural. So, I took a public speaking course in college, and we went over like lots of different ways that you can do different kinds of speeches. And the one that always resonated with me the most is called extemporaneous speaking. And that's where you have general points that you're going to hit and a general order you want to hit them in, but you're not writing out the specific words, right?
Gotcha.
And when you do that, a lot of times it comes off much more genuine and much more naturally. So that's a suggestion I would give, right? Is to try kind of like loosely write like a little intro if you're really looking to make it something different, you know. um,
Okay.
and same thing with closing events, right? I think it's good to have a strong close as well. So for me, it's simple. Like all I do is I say GG's and see you next time. But I literally say that at like the end of every single one of my casts. But it's better than saying, well, guess that's about it. So bye, right? It's like that's of course an
I've done that
extreme example
before,
of how
yeah.
not to do it, right? But at the same time, you don't kind of want to just like kind of meander into the end of the show. Give it a distinct end. Have something that you're set up to say that really brings it to a nice and satisfying close.